I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination.
When you voted leave, was it about the EU? Was it about kicking the government? Was it about change of any kind? Or was it about something that I haven't mentioned?
Everything.
Right.
I had no longer had confidence in his leadership, and he then dismissed me from the shadow cabinet.
I feel that I've served in the best way I can, and today I had to go.
Here at Westminster, in the last few minutes, there are more Labour resignations, 3 shadow ministers.
He doesn't need them shadow cabinets. Get an election and he'll get in.
Seamus, I'm not sure this is a great idea. Is that my job?
And I thought I was having a bad day.
You were fighting for the exit. The British people voted in favour of the exit. Why are you here?
My pitch is very simple. I'm Theresa May and I think I'm the best person to be Prime Minister of this country.
Tom, I'm really sorry to interrupt. We're just hearing that Michael Gove is preparing to announce his candidacy as well.
What's your message to Michael Gove? What's your message to Michael Gove?
I have concluded that person cannot be me.
And came reluctantly but firmly to the conclusion that I should stand and that Boris should stand aside.
I cannot, unfortunately, get on with doing what I wanted to do, so it'll be up to somebody else now. And I wish him every possible success.
For once, the clichés seem almost inadequate. It really was a political earthquake. We really are in uncharted waters, and we really do have no idea what happens next. So the search for clarity and maybe even some certainty is underway. And while it's a little previous to suggest that much dust has settled, a week has now passed since the referendum result was revealed. So we have at least had some time to consider its possible ramifications. Time now then, obviously, for a poll, examining where we were, where we are, and where we think we might be going with Brexit. It's thrown up a few surprises, and some rather bad news for anyone hoping that they'd seen the back of the ballot box for a while.
Have you had enough of voting yet? Apparently not. In fact, almost half of voters polled said Britain should hold another general election before the UK starts to negotiate Brexit, so that each party can set out its own vision for life outside the EU. And maybe this is why. 59% told us they were not confident in Britain's political leaders getting the best possible Brexit deal for Britain. That rises to 76% of Remain voters. And what about buyer's remorse? All those voters who supposedly want to change their minds? Well, maybe not. 92% of respondents said they'd definitely vote the same way, but of them, 5% of Leave voters did say they would now change their vote, compared to just 2% of Remain voters. And finally, imagine if all this just went away. Well, more than a third of voters think it might. 22% said they don't know if Britain will actually leave the EU, and 16% think the UK will actively defy the Brexit vote and find a way to stay in.
Of course, that's only part of the post-ref picture. The real action is unfolding at Westminster, where just about everything is up for grabs on both sides of the House. To provide a measure of the mayhem, no pun intended, you could probably argue tonight that the parliamentary party which didn't want a leadership battle is having one, while the parliamentary party that desperately does want a leadership battle isn't. Yet. Newsnight's political editor Nick Watt is filling his boots. Nick, you've found out about a plan to help ease Jeremy Corbyn out of the door.
Yes, well, all the signs from John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, today was that Jeremy Corbyn was not going anywhere and he was going to stay. But I understand there was a delegation of Shadow Cabinet Ministers yesterday who tried and failed to meet Jeremy Corbyn to suggest a plan that could allow him to resign with dignity. They were talking, for example, that a commission could be set up over the summer and that would entrench some of his ideas about how you democratise the Labour Party, and it would also commit the party to push on with some of his core policies on inequality, and that if that could happen and if some of the leadership contenders could agree to that, then he would perhaps pre-announce his retirement and he would go after the Labour conference. Now, What is really interesting about this is that people like John McDonnell are very, very wary of this, because they are scared that the moment that he gives up the power, that's it for the left. But I understand that some members on the left who were in that room last year when his candidacy was approved, that they thought with great reluctance and sadness that this may be the wise thing to do, because they fear that the party could divide.
I hesitate to ask, but there's more bad news for the Labour leader tonight.
Yes, there's an interesting YouGov poll out of Unite members. That's the Unite Trade Union, whose General Secretary Len McCluskey is obviously one of Jeremy Corbyn's most ardent supporters. And this shows that 75% of Unite people who voted Labour in the general election last year believe that Jeremy Corbyn will not be Prime Minister. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if Jeremy Corbyn's opponents in the Labour Party pick up on this to challenge one of his central arguments. And that central argument is, I may not have any support at Westminster, but I do have support in the wider Labour movement. Important health warning: election data who commissioned this poll by YouGov admit that YouGov were not able to do the full weighting that you would normally expect, because they don't know the exact demographic breakdown of Unite members. But you know what, James? We shouldn't forget that there is actually a contest to choose the next Prime Minister of this country. So I thought what I would do is take a look at how that's going, and also see how the front runner, Theresa May, is getting on. Who would have believed it? The plodder of the cabinet, who eschews the intrigue of Westminster, political gossip and the party circuit, is emerging as the surprise frontrunner in the Tory leadership contest.
She brings to her work a professionalism, dedication and hard work, a willingness to confront difficult problems, and that may be in great measure due to the fact that she's a woman, which probably is rather a positive at the present time, in my view, in terms of our national politics.
There's an unmistakable buzz around the Home Secretary, and her rivals are concerned. 36 hours ago, Boris Johnson appeared to be the slam-dunk candidate in the Tory leadership contest, after his former friend Michael Gove ended his lifetime's ambition to be Prime Minister. The question tonight is whether the Theresa May juggernaut is unstoppable. Like it or loathe it, Theresa May is now defining this leadership contest and even influencing wider government policy.
It's incredibly important we maintain fiscal credibility.
George Osborne indicated today that he would abandon his plan to achieve an overall budget surplus, a day after the Home Secretary said she would do just that.
Michael Gove.
And at his campaign launch, Michael Gove had his sights set on Theresa May when he said that the next Prime Minister must be a Brexit supporter. But Gove knows he has to overcome the perception that he is guilty of a double act of treachery against two old friends, David Cameron and Boris Johnson.
As we sit here today, you have to conclude that, as it were, it looks as though he's gone over the Reichenbach falls with Boris Johnson. It's taken him off, but done some damage to his own reputation as someone who previously had been a bit above the fray, but has now, gone down into the marketplace and has been swinging punches like the rest of them.
Fans of the Justice Secretary say he has the brains and personal touch to make it.
He's a powerhouse of a man, an intellectual that I've known for 30 years, I've watched grow and develop. He's a radical reformer, and he's a man who has always led his politics by conviction. He's the one who persuaded me to stand in politics, and he has the same vision for our country that I do, which is that we can really bring everyone together.
But momentum appears to be building up behind Andrea Leadsom, after the Energy Minister won the support of the former Tory leader Ian Duncan-Smith. Perhaps Leadsom could become the main Brexit challenger to Theresa May.
Candidates with novelty tend to do well in leadership elections. No one had heard of John Major in 1990. William Hague was a relatively junior figure in 1997. Ian Duncan-Smith had been a Maastricht rebel. So Andrea Leadsom could come, just could, from the outside to give Theresa May a bit of a run for her money.
With as many as 79 Tory MPs in the bag, some of Theresa May's supporters hope this contest could be sewn up at Westminster by next week.
They are nervous that if the contest goes to the second stage, decided by grassroots Tory members, the Home Secretary's support for the Remain side in the referendum could count against her.
The main test for Theresa May is whether or not she can persuade Tory members that they should elect her when she was for Remain and when all the evidence is that a majority of them were for Leave. There's a form in Tory leadership contests being about Europe.
British politics is being refashioned right in front of our eyes, but even in the middle of a revolution, perhaps it will be the steadiest member of the crew who will guide us to the next stage.
We're off to the pub now, the one in Burnley, where you'll recall we canvassed the immediate post-vote feelings pretty comprehensively. So, have they changed much? Will feuding friends forgive and forget? In a moment, Nick Blakemore will find out. But first, a quick reminder of how those Brexit campaigners reacted when they found out the result.
I'm over the moon. I don't know what to say. We did it. Everybody woke up in time. Everybody listened. Everybody understands. Yes, it's going to be rough at the beginning, but we've done it.
So, a week on, how are they feeling? And just to warn you, you may hear some strong language in the background of Nick's film.
We've got to both come together and we've got to work together to make this work.
It's like anything. You either go for it or you get left behind.
We're all in the same boat, we're all in the same pot. We now move forward. We're not Leave and Remain, we are United Kingdom.
No, we'll leave.
We are leaving,
We've left.
But we've got to remember that a large percentage of this country voted Remain. And we don't feel that way.
Look at me and Luke, right? He's Remain. I'm out of order. Yeah? I mean, you're falling out.
No.
Might have been 10 minutes like, but you know.
This time will just carry on, as it were. We just want people to know that England is not an easy touch. You know what I mean? You can't just come here and take. To enjoy the advantages of this country, you've got to contribute. It's as simple as that.
Why do you think Burnley voted to leave?
They're tired of paying out for people who think it's a career option to just be a dosser and get a council house and just take. And we're getting sick of this. You know, you look around, every one of us here are hard-working men. And that's what we're sick of.
Occasionally.
I actually voted in last week. The reason was because I just feel that Britain has a massive role to play in the European Union, and it doesn't make sense to me for us to come out of that. I'm second generation Italian, so my mum and dad came over here. But I think the biggest thing is that I was born here, but all my friends that are around here in Burnley have no issue whatsoever with any foreign people coming to this country, because as long as the foreign people that come here contribute, I think that's the main thing. And the biggest gripe that this country has is any foreign people that come over here and just grab from the state, and I think that's the biggest issue.
Did you vote leave in this referendum, pal?
He's not playing.
I did, yeah, definitely. You know why? I voted because I want to say over laws that are made.
I voted Leave, which the majority of people around here did. I'm not sure if it were the right thing or the wrong thing. We'll soon find out.
People making the laws now that we don't even vote over.
No, that's right.
That's my biggest gripe.
You could definitely say that we've seen a decline in our living standards, especially in the northwest, the north of England. I mean, I have family who live down south, like Basingstoke, and you go down there and it's like a different country.
So we talk about like how it's what's happened down south compared to what's happened in northwest, but if you think about it, we now have a say over where that money goes, and I'd say to anyone who's annoyed about this referendum, annoyed that we've voted to leave and they wanted to remain, get involved in politics right now, because at this moment in time it's the biggest change you can make.
I'd say that if there's going to be any left wing ever again, they've got to realise that they're not the super intelligent people that they think they are, and they have to respect the voice of normal working people, and we're not stupid.
I see the pros and the cons. You know, either way, to be honest with you, I think either way, putting it bluntly, we're going to get screwed either way.
And joining me now is the novelist Kazuo Ishiguro, the Japanese-born, raised in Surrey, and as the author of The Remains of the Day, the man responsible for a lyrical evocation of interwar England, so powerful and convincing that it won the Booker Prize and was made into a famous film. Kazuo, I mentioned these three parts of your past because they paint you in a way as a sort of literary poster boy for multicultural Britain and full integration, and yet you write in today's Financial Times of your fears that that sort of Britain may be in some sort of mortal threat. Why?
Mortal threat might be putting it a little melodramatically, but I think this is very serious. You know, in my whole lifetime here, I don't think I felt this anxious. I mean, the nation is very bitterly divided, it's leaderless, it's very anxious. If I was a strategist for the far right now, I would be getting very excited. You know, this is probably the best opportunity since the 1930s to push Britain towards some sort of neo-Nazi racism. And I think we've got to, I mean, all the decent people in this country, and I mean both people on both sides of the referendum divide, have got to rally around some sort of decent heart of Britain, and I think that decent heart. I don't doubt that decent heart. You know,
not even a little. There's some grim tales this week.
I was shaken. You know, I was a firm Remain person. You know, and I was shaken like a lot of people. But in the end, I have a faith. I mean, about the essential decency of this country. I speak both as somebody who grew up as the only visible foreigner at school. I was always the only foreign boy at school, only foreign kid in the community. Over the years, I've lived in various parts of Britain when very large numbers of immigrants came from the Caribbean, Africa, Asian subcontinent, during a time of enormous economic turmoil in the 70s and the 80s. People like the National Front, the BNP, have never gained a hold in this country. You know, I think, and just as it was in the first half of the 20th century, and basically I can tell from my perspective, everything I know about this country, is that it is essentially a very decent, tolerant country. It does racism really badly, even worse than football. You know? They just don't do. I mean, and when fascism was rampaging across Europe in the first half of the 20th century, it couldn't get a foothold here. But I think we shouldn't be complacent now. And I think the country does need to, the decent part of the country needs something to rally around. Well,
let's try and identify what that may be. But, of course, there'll be plenty of people watching this, as you well know, and as you refer to in your piece, who voted to leave the European Union and would be just as chilled by the spectre that you portray as anybody else on the Remain side is. It's a challenge to really separate, isn't it, the toxicity that seems to have been emboldened by the result and the people who will be just as alarmed by that emboldening as anybody else is. How can we do that?
I absolutely believe that you know, majority of the people who voted leave are not racists.
Of course.
Yeah, some are. Yeah, but you know, just at the local level, I would like to see I would like to see some sort of campaign, declaration, petition. No, I can't do it. I'm from the Remain camp. So the people from the Leave camp, I would like them to clearly say that they're against the kind of xenophobia and racism that is threatening to...
Have you detected any yourself? Have you
not personally, no, just reading. I mean, there are a lot of people who are very anxious, you know, and we've heard reports of just things that weren't acceptable before seeming to be acceptable.
Told to go
I think
home
yes, exactly. It's at that level at the moment. I don't know how deep it goes, but I would like to see the people from the Leave camp just clearly isolate the racists, by saying this isn't us. I'd even offer them a slogan. Leave racism. Hashtag whatever.
Yes, it needs a hashtag.
Let's just try and win back the tone of this thing. At a deeper level, at a deeper kind of thing. I'm one of the people who would like to see a second referendum, not a replay of the last one. But I think what we lack now is a proper mandate for the new Prime Minister, whoever it is, on what sort of Brexit we are going to go for. And I think we need some sort of discussion for a mandate.
You've pulled the pin on the second referendum grenade just as our time together comes to an end. So we shall have to leave it there. Kazuo Ishiguro, many thanks.
Thank you very much.
Of course, the referendum shockwaves reach much further than the shores of these islands, and few countries have been watching events here more closely than France. One of the original architects of the common market and, of course, a long historical obstacle to the UK's membership. The country today hosts a growing strain of Gallic Euro-scepticism and may be developing an appetite for what has inevitably been dubbed Frexit. Newsnight's Gabriel Gatehouse has been taking a breath of French air to find out how events on this side of the channel have played out over there.
I'm sad and angry. I always wanted Britain to be part of a European dream.
It may look like life as normal. Paris in summertime, cafes, strikes, the odd riot. But make no mistake, Brexit was an earthquake. The old Europe is changed.
I was like this, no, you can't do that. We have a future together.
On the side of the far right, it has come as a divine surprise.
One has to react very quickly because the disease is very profound.
In the run-up to the referendum, Newsnight met Georges Bertrand, one of the founding fathers of the European Union. Brexit, he believes, is a disaster.
The results for Britain are extremely complex, dangerous, difficult to manage. But the results in Britain is not only a domestic issue, I will not intervene, but that concerns us too.
Monsieur Bertrand played a prominent role in shepherding Britain into the common market. And so, for him, it's personal.
We consider Britain as an exceptional country. As itself, the role it played in two wars, the way the democratic life was developed, and at the same time we were absolutely aware that Europe without Britain was not Europe. The English parliamentary tradition had a very positive influence on the way the European Parliament started to evolve.
Today in France, an unpopular centre-left government is trying to force through reforms to the Labour Code. It's not going well.
Well, the French, of course, are no strangers to this kind of Labour protest, but it does feel now that there's a flight from the centre to the left and to the right.
On the left, they see the EU as part of a neoliberal project, which they blame for austerity, inequality and rising unemployment. And yet even here, some are dismayed by Brexit.
Okay, Europe as it exists is shit, but we can't, as we say in French, throw away baby with the water of the bath.
Baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah,
we say the same in Egypt.
We can't do that.
In France, discontent with the political establishment is rising. And the chief beneficiaries are not on the left, but on the right. The Front National was once a fringe movement, the preserve of ageing ex-colonialists bitter about the loss of empire. No longer. Like the left, young FN supporters rail against globalisation. But for them, Brexit is a cause for celebration.
Les Britanniques ont ouvert la porte et on espère qu'ils vont la maintenir ouverte pour nous et pour tous les autres peuples d'Europe.
Un message fort, historique je pense aussi, parce que depuis il n'y avait eu aucun événement aussi important depuis la chute du mur, donc c'est quelque chose de très galvanisant. Mur de Berlin. Oui.
Effectivement, dans chaque pays européen, il y a le parti patriote, souverainiste, anti-mondialiste qui monte. On n'est pas forcément d'accord avec tout, hein. Je vais vous le dire tout de suite, on n'est pas d'accord avec tout ce que dit Podemos. On a été très déçus par ce qui s'est passé en Grèce, ce Tsipras a trahi son peuple. On est intéressé par ce que fait le UKIP, on est intéressé par ce que fait la Ligue du Nord, ce que fait l'Alternative für Deutschland.
Polls suggest the Front National could win the presidency next year. The polls also show a rise in Eurosceptic sentiment. And the Front National leader, Marine Le Pen, has promised a referendum on Brexit.
It's the same cocktail than for the Brexit, in a way. It's anti-immigrant feeling because it's an open door to immigration, refugees and possibly terrorism. So the second issue is insecurity, law and order. And the third dimension is anti-elites. The idea that the people who govern us, they're so far away, they don't understand us, the little people, and they're corrupt.
And here is a curious paradox. In a country with a proud democratic tradition, many people feel disenfranchised. Sure, they can vote for a choice of parties and politicians, but many feel the politicians are all saying the same things in a language they no longer understand. It's not just France. In corridors of power across Europe, politicians, the centrist establishment, the people who by and large have governed this continent since the end of the Second World War, are suddenly realizing that for a whole variety of different reasons, vast swathes of their electorate simply don't believe in them anymore. It's not that the centrists aren't aware of the problem, they are. They just don't seem to know what to do about it.
People have a sense that they are losing the control of their nation. As a result of globalization, the arrival of huge companies from the other side of the world who are controlling now their economy, you're losing control of your economy, you're losing control of the people coming in your nation. A lot of poor whites consider they are losing money, they are paying for the newcomers. And I sense this anger all over the country here in France. I'm worried about that because governments tend to, for example, right now we are involved in legislation that has no impact on these issues, but it's like a theater.
You're irrelevant.
In many ways, yes. Because of lack of courage, essentially.
Britain used to rule the world. Europe used to rule the world. That's finished.
Europe is in the grip of a malaise. For some, Brexit presents an opportunity for renewal. For others, it is a dangerous gamble.
I'm angry because we are putting our respective security in danger and democracy in danger. In spite of the economic and social division in Europe, we were the most balanced part of the world, the most human part of the world, the most socially advanced of the world. That could be jeopardized.
Lose by 4% of the vote in a general election and you find yourself in strong opposition with a fighting chance of halting legislation and embarrassing the government. Win 48% of the vote in a referendum and you find yourself with absolutely nothing. Politically, your position is in many ways no stronger than if you'd won 0%. With all the Conservative leadership candidates now fully committed to Brexit and the winner, of course, guaranteed to govern, what will opposition even look like? And who will speak for the 48%? Some suggest we're approaching a fundamental redrawing of traditional party politics, but few are prepared to predict what it might look like. Joining me now to survey the scene are the journalist and broadcaster Paul Mason, the Times columnist Phil Collins and the former advisor to Nick Clegg, Polly Mackenzie. We'll get on to the highfalutin stuff imminently, but I'd like to begin by asking you all a very simple question. Who's in the biggest mess at the moment, the Conservatives or the Labour Party? And Polly, I'll start with you.
Probably the Labour Party, because the Conservatives at least have a process which is going to get them to a leader that they will broadly all be happy with, even if the country has to like it or lump it. Whereas the Labour Party, frankly, this could go on for months or even years.
Well, the Conservative Party's mess is more important because they're visiting on the rest of us. I mean, they're visiting on the country. So their mess is more important in that sense. But the bigger mess, if it weren't for that obviously important fact, is the Labour Party, which is facing the prospect it might not even exist quite soon.
An existential threat to the Labour Party, Paul Mason.
Yes, well, I noticed that your political editor, comprehensive though he was on the unnamed sources inside Westminster, omitted to report that there have been tens of thousands of people on the streets here in Manchester, in Cardiff and Birmingham just tonight, supporting Jeremy Corbyn. Now, Labour is in a mess. And I think what you've seen so far is the equivalent of the kind of harker before the rugby match. If the actual rugby match kicks off, it's going to get very brutal. And I think what we all need to do on all sides of this debate, I'm a Labour member, I voted Remain, is to try and find a way to de-escalate it. Because this generation of people who've signed up to depose Jeremy Corbyn, these young centre-left MPs, have no idea what an actual struggle inside the Labour movement looks like. Those of us who saw the miners' strike, and have seen what people are getting ready for right now, fear that it won't disappear. It may, however, seriously split.
Who speaks for you at the moment politically as a Corbyn-friendly Remainer?
Well, Jeremy Corbyn. I think he's speaking, but of course the wider Labour family have to find some way of de-escalating this and, of course, focusing on the policies. The fact is, Corbyn and MacDonald have scored a fantastic success this week. Not one you would want to score, but they've knocked Osborne away from his fiscal rule. We were calling for him to do that. He's dropped it. But now we have to come up with a new fiscal policy for Britain. I would be arguing for a fiscal stimulus, tax cuts for businesses to attract investment now, investment tax spending to boost investment. All of that needs to happen. But of course, it's going to cannon straight into the Brexit negotiations. We need both parties actually to be on the ball and thinking in a centrist and national interested way.
OK, Paul. Philip Collins, the credit for the fiscal retreat of George Osborne being handed there to Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. I'll let you respond to that in a moment. I'm interested also in the notion of Jeremy Corbyn speaking for Labour Remainers while Labour Remainers in the main blame him for the Brexit.
Yeah, which I think is a bit harsh. Actually, I think there's a lot more in the vote to leave the European Union than could have been solved by Jeremy Corbyn. So I don't think it helps to blame him. He was a pretty lukewarm advocate for it, but that's because he's not very good. It's not because he had a particular bad day, it's that he was as good as he can be, which is not very good at all. I think it's, as scientists say of a bad theory, that it's not even wrong. And it's not even wrong to suggest that Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell are to gain the credit for George Osborne changing his rule. He's changed the rule because the country's had a massive economic shock and we're going to come out of the European Union. Now, it's perfectly reasonable in politics to try and claim your opponent's shift, so I've no objection to them attempting to do so, but it's not credible to think that that's the reason it's happened.
Polly, are we looking at something rather more fundamental than the usual local difficulties, infighting and squabbles that typify your world?
I think something has to change because, as you said in your intro, there's nobody who really represents the 48%, the people who voted for Remain. And we don't even have a mandate for a government to negotiate our Brexit. As we were hearing earlier, we don't know what kind of Brexit we want, a sort of economically sensible EEA-type strategy or, full, complete distance, and we just cut ourselves off and float in the middle Atlantic. And actually, unless there's some sort of election or some sort of realignment of politics, nobody has a mandate to make that decision.
Well, what would that realignment look like?
At the moment, God only knows. I mean, you know, there is this growth in the Liberal Democrats, but with only 8 MPs, it's hard to see Tim Farron
has
leading.
committed to a campaign, a manifesto that would involve doing everything possible to get back into the European Union.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and so I feel very strongly represented by that, but they only have 8 MPs, and it's very hard to see that as being enough to build a new centre party.
It's possible that a break could come if Jeremy Corbyn digs in, and then he's challenged and he wins again, and then the 172 Labour MPs in Parliament who've declared no confidence in him declare themselves a new party. That's not beyond the bounds of possibility at the moment. So we're closer perhaps than we've ever been before. I'm not sure it's a great solution or a great outcome, but that's entirely feasible at the moment.
Have we found something on which you can all agree, Paul Mason, that a fundamental realignment might well be on the horizon?
I think centrist politics, which wants to rejoin the European Union after this, overtly and proactively rejoin the European Union, would have to be a new party, because neither the Conservatives nor the Labour are going to do that as parties. But I do think there's a big problem for centrist politics, full stop. Centrist politicians from both sides are going to be called upon to act in the national interest in a way that they're not really used to defining. You know, what should happen right now is we should slash business tax and we should boost business investment. The moment we do that, the people we're across the table from in the Brexit negotiations, the French and the Germans, are going to say, hold on a minute, this is unfair competition, Mr. whoever it is they're talking to. Please withdraw your tax cut in order to get back into the EEA. I favour going into the EEA. I also favour doing rapid tax cuts to boost growth and business investment. So we need a political class that knows how to do this kind of thing. They're not used to it because they're used to 40-odd years of multilateralism that they triggered the breakdown of.
Mr. or of course, it may well be a Mrs.
I'm very sorry.
That's quite all right that they'll be negotiating with.
Most importantly, there isn't anybody to make those decisions. We've had this unbelievably hectic week in British politics, but actually we have no more clarity 1 week on about what on earth we're going to do next. And it's that complete vacuum which, you know, whatever negotiating strategy we adopt, the truth is we need to start doing something, because all across Europe, and especially in Brussels, people are planning for how to negotiate this in their interests and not in ours, whereas we are just, you know, we've got a Cabinet Office team of 3 people thinking about this.
And of course a referendum doesn't give you a mandate for anything in particular. It's a mandate to leave the European Union.
It's a binary question.
But on no
How big a part do you think that'll play in the Conservative candidate battle? Do you think they'll be putting forward rival visions of Brexit, or do you think they'll just be trying to sort of woo the party faithful in the usual ways?
It's very interesting that the overwhelming favourite appears to be someone who voted Remain.
Yes.
Who's on the Remain side, Theresa May. I mean, I guess nobody would have predicted that this time last week, but then I suppose nobody would have predicted anything that's happened this time last week. But it does appear that she's moving ahead, and yet, as we said in the introduction, everybody there is committed to exit. I don't think any of them really have the first idea what it means yet. So I think if they do put forward any plans, they'll be very meagre plans indeed.
Paul Mason?
Hello?
I beg your pardon, Paul. I was expecting you to respond to what Philip Collins said.
No, I'm sorry, yes. Yeah, look... What's amazing at the moment is the fact that we've got all the political class cannot utter the words that we've uttered on this discussion, EEA, European Economic Area. It is the obvious solution to apply for the European Economic Area, to design a variation on free movement, ask for the emergency break you can get, and then start from there. You may not get it, and you may have to fall back to a complete break with the EU, but it's logical to go for that. What frustrates me on all sides of Parliament is that people are not prepared to do that, and that's because the party machinery is fractured.
Paul Mason, Philip Collins, Polly Mackenzie, many thanks indeed. That is almost all we have time for tonight. Just a little bit of time left for me to jump on a rather wonderful Welsh bandwagon. So, nos da.